Well, now, folks, I'd like to be serious for a minute, if you don't mind. I've got a confession to make. When I was 7, I never went to school from then onwards. Nobody's fault, only my own. And it was a great handicap because I never learnt to read and write properly, you see. And the only bit of reading and writing I can do is what I picked up myself later on. I'm still a lousy speller, by the way. But that's where Beryl came in, you see. She used to do all my business for me. Because I went away to the stables when I was 7 to become a jockey. And I went down to Bishop Canning's. At the age of 10, I had my first mount in a race. I don't know whether it's a record, but I don't know of anybody that's ridden younger than that. In 1915, the First World War broke out, and it stopped racing in England. So the trainer I was with, we went out to Ireland, and I rode there for 5 seasons till 1919. Then I came back to Newmarket and became apprentice jockey riding for Lord Derby. In 1920, I went up to Malton and had my last mount in a race on a course Old Chris. And there was me, old at 16. Well, just then, at that time, my dad collapsed and died in pantomime at Newcastle. Well, that was very awkward and a very sad blow, because actually he was going to retire, start a training stable, and I was going to train horses. But fate stepped in and it wasn't to be. So they said to me, well, what are you going to do now? I said, well, I'm not going back to the racing business, I'm too heavy. They said, why don't you go on the stage? I said, what the hell could I do on the stage? They said, well, you don't know till you try. Anyway, I learnt 2 songs off the records, 2 of my dad's songs, and a friend of his called Fred Harrison, he gave me a week's work at the place called the Hippodrome Earlstown. It's a little tin hut near Newton-le-Willers. And Newton-le-Willers is near Wigan, by the way. Wigan's in Lancashire. Well, anyway, I didn't go as George Formby. I took my mother's maiden name, Hoy, because my dad's name has always been top of the bill, and I knew I wouldn't be top of the bill the first time, it'd be like that. And I didn't want the name of Formby to be small. I said, I'll use Formby when I top bills myself. And I was lucky enough to do that. Well, at the end of the week, I got £5. And then I got what was known in those days as a Moss tour. That was one of the big halls, and I worked in this very theatre. I was first turn, 3 minutes, died the death of a dog. Oh yes, it's truth night tonight. And at the end of the Moss tour, I didn't get any more work. Of course, they give me that for sympathy out of my dad, you see. Well, I was out of work for 3 months, and nearly starved. Then I went to what is known as a Niffit show. You know, if it comes in, you get it. If it doesn't, you don't. Well, we ran 5 weeks, and we finished up in West Hartlepool. Then I had a few pals in a show called the Swanee Minstrels, and they said they were going to Castleford, and would I go with them for a week? Said, we'll give you £5. Well, that was a lot of money for me then. Well, I went over to Blackton as a minstrel, you see. But I didn't go so well. I went usually, bad. And then on the Tuesday, I met a young woman, and I fell for her. And, well, 5 months later, I married her. And that was when my luck turned. You see, I married Beryl, and then she knew a man in Newcastle called Thomas F. Connery. He used to run reviews. He gave me a week's work up there, and he liked my act. I don't know why, but he liked it. And he gave me a review contract for 5 years. Well, I never looked back after that. And I shall always be grateful to Beryl for doing all the business for me, you see. Anyway, I went on I went, and I worked, and I worked, and I worked. And, of course, it would take me a month to tell you all the different things Beryl's done for me, but some other time, probably. I'm getting back to the song now. And now I'm going to speak to the kiddies. You know, don't be as daft as I was. When you can go to school, I could have gone and I didn't. But you go to school, you do your own work. You'll find in later years it'll pay off. Because I was never blessed with kids of my own. And every time I sing this little song, well, I always feel a bit sad, you know. Day is nearly through. You're tired too, and I know you've done your best. Tomorrow morning your daily jerks will do, so make the most of your night's rest. Good night, little fellas, good night. It's time to close your eyes and go to sleep. A bedtime story, though I could tell, you might repeat it by and by, so I'd sooner sing a lullaby. Someday you'll go your way. It may not be an easy fight, so don't give in. Make up your mind to win. Good night, little fellas, good night. Little fellas, good night. It's time to close your eyes and go to sleep. A bedtime story, though I could tell, you may repeat it by and by, so I'd sooner sing a lullaby. Someday you'll go your way. It may not be an easy fight, but don't give in. Make up your mind to win. Good night, little fellas, good night. Good night, little fellas, good night. Well, this seems to be confession night. Because during this afternoon, the producer of the show said he was going to put a banjo in the band, you see. I said, well, don't do that, because they play proper harmony and I only play Chinese harmony. You see, what I've got to confess, folks, is that I don't understand music. I don't read it or write it, although I play these things. And of course, you see, a ukulele is strung in a certain key, and I can only play in one key. And a lot of my songs are in different keys, so I've got to have a different uke for each song. You see, nobody's ever heard that before. They think this is a gimmick, all this lot. But the trouble is, sometimes I pick the wrong one up. And then it's every man for himself. Of course, I'm skating on thin ice telling you things like this, you know. But, that brings me to another song. You know, about 30-odd years ago, I had my first big hit. Well, it's not a bad song. It shouldn't be bad. It's been kept in cold storage all these years. Open the fridge, Wolfie. Let's see what it sounds like. Now here's a new amusement that is getting all the rage. You'll find that it's good exercise for folks of every age. Now I go there most every night and sometimes take the wife. I've never had so many ups and downs in all my life since I've been sitting on the ice in the ice rink. Sitting on the ice with my skates off. It's the finest fun I've ever had. Put it on the ice, it'll never go back. There's lots of nice young ladies, and how I like to tease them. If they don't give way or say okay, I sit them on the ice and freeze them. Last night I went out walking with the pretty little miss. She said, I like you very much, and gave me one big kiss. She was a perfect little blonde and not so very old. She let me hold her in my arms, but blimey, she was cold, 'cause she'd been sitting on the ice in the ice rink, sitting on the ice with her skates off. Oh, well, hot she must have felt. She sat up on the ice and the ice began to melt. She was so young and pretty, but what a blow that fall had dealt her. We couldn't pick her up in the ordinary way. We had to bring a fire and melt.